Thank you very much. I need to move here. I don't get that back home. I want to start by saying thank you for giving me a couple hours of your time tonight. I'm kidding. I do want to tell you how happy I am to be here. And when Andy asked me to come, I said, look, Andy, I never travel. I really never travel for multiple reasons. My probation officer is a jerk, and it's hard to get permission to leave. Seriously, I am married to one of the most beautiful women in the world. We will celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary in August. That is for her more so than for me. We live on a golf course, and I have every ESPN sports channel that you can have. So there's no reason for me to leave South Carolina, except I wanted to come here tonight. I wanted to come for three reasons. First of all, I want to thank you for Andy. My father is a physician. So go ahead, give him a hand, please. So I deeply respect people smart enough to get through medical school. My dad was a physician. I respect them. But when you find a doctor who not only can speak to healthcare issues, the so-called Affordable Care Act, but also is bright enough to talk about cultural issues and constitutional issues, when you have someone with that background, which our fellow citizens respect, and they can also talk to other issues like fiscal issues, you need to hang on to him. I'm going to tell you, he's a sophomore like I am, but he punches above his weight class. People listen to Andy when he has something to say. So I wanted to come and say thank you for Andy. I wanted to come and talk to you about how I think we can win again. And the third reason I wanted to come is I wanted to come compliment you on your courage. I come from a state where every statewide elected official is a Republican. The House is controlled by Republicans. The Senate is controlled by Republicans. Both of our United States senators are Republicans, and 6 out of 7 members of Congress are Republicans. It does not take courage to be a Republican in South Carolina. It does take courage to be one in Maryland. And to wake up and see that they've already put this state in a certain column, and you need not work, and you need not get out, and you need not try to persuade, would be demoralizing to me. So I wanted to come and say thank you for your courage. It takes no courage to be a Republican in my state. None. It does here. It's different here. So thank you. Before we talk about how to win again, and I know this is the first time I've met many of you, and it's socially inappropriate to share the details of a dream with the group that you just met. I don't know how many of you have a background in psychiatry or psychology, but I did. I had a horrible dream last night, and if you'd give me just a couple of minutes, I'd love to share it with you, and if any of you can interpret it, that'd be great too. In my dream, John Boehner, Lindsey Graham, and Andy Harris all tragically died and went to heaven the same day. That could happen, I guess. 2 of them, for sure. I think it was a lightning bolt hitting a golf cart, but I'm not for sure how they died. But I know that they got to heaven, and St. Peter said, look, I know you're big shots on earth, but the rule's up here. You either follow the rules or there are going to be consequences. Well, Speaker Boehner was the first person to break the rules in heaven. He broke into a CVS to steal some cigarettes and some tannin lotion. It's my dream. It happened. Trust me, I'm a lawyer. So in my dream, I see John Boehner, and he is chained to Nancy Pelosi with a 10-foot long chain. And in a voice as loud as thunder, I hear, John Boehner, you violated the rules of heaven, and this is your punishment for all of eternity. And then I see Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey's running around in heaven wanting to know where John McCain is. I'm not going to get into why McCain wasn't there. That's up to somebody else. But in my dream, Senator Graham was chained to Roseanne Barr with a 5-foot long chain, and a voice as loud as thunder. I hear, Lindsey Graham, you have violated the rules of heaven, and this is your punishment for all of eternity. And this is where I get emotional, because Andy's a friend. Andy's a friend, but in my dream, I see Dr. Andy Harris. And he is chained with a 5-foot long chain to the former supermodel Cindy Crawford. And in a voice as loud as thunder, I hear, Cindy Crawford, you have violated the rules. Andy mentioned to you that we had leadership races today, and 3 of my friends were running for one slot. I was a liberal arts major, but the math doesn't work out when 3 people are running for one slot. So obviously 2 of my friends, and I'm sure 2 of Andy's friends, were unsuccessful. And I was trying to console one of them afterwards, and I said, you know what? If Jesus can lose a voice vote to a guy named Barabbas, then all of us can lose. Right? All of us can lose. And I think throughout my life, the heroes that I looked up to, and almost all of them lost. They lost in the eyes of the world, whether it's Dietrich Bonhoeffer, whether it's Abraham Lincoln. They lost. So it's not losing that defines us. It's whether or not you know what you're fighting about in the first place that defines you. There's no dishonor in losing. The dishonor comes when you can't even tell people what's worth fighting for. So as we go into your election in June, and we go into November, and then we go into 2016, I want us to figure out how to win again. And when I think about how to win again, I think, like any good Baptist preacher, I think of 3 things. I think about our message. Is the message of principled conservatism still a winning message? It has to be, because we're not going to change it. And I'll tell you why I think it is. I think the message of personal responsibility and accountability to others, and education and hard work being the pathway to prosperity, and a strong national defense, and respect for the rule of law, if that message won't work, then I don't want to be in politics. So my mama asked me to record a video today, and like everyone, your mama asks you to do something, you're going to do it. And I went and got my friend Tim Scott, who used to be in the House with us, and now he's in the Senate. Timmy's a great person. And Timmy and I went and recorded a video for my mama in a church group. And the video is entitled, What It Means to Be an American. And I was thinking about, what does it mean to be an American? And for me, as an old washed up prosecutor, it's the law. Why are people dying to come here, literally dying to come here? What is it about us that makes people willing to do anything to come here? And I think to myself, well, for me, it's the law, because we're a nation of laws. Law is the most unifying force in this culture, and law is the most equalizing force in this culture. What else makes the richest person in this county have to drive the same speed limit as the poorest person in this county? What else makes the richest person in Maryland have to pay his or her taxes on exactly the same date as the poorest person in Maryland? Where is the ground completely level if it's not at the footstep of a woman called justice? So law is the most equalizing and unifying force in this culture. So what is going to happen to this culture in this republic if we have an administration that selectively chooses which part of the law they're going to enforce? And whether it's the health care law, or whether it's the immigration law, or my personal favorite, mandatory minimums, I don't expect but maybe half of you to be familiar with drug laws. Trust me when I tell you that X amount of methamphetamine by law gets you X amount of time in jail. You may like that law, you may not like that law, but it is the law. So if you don't like it, go to Congress and advocate to change it, but that's not what our Attorney General wants to do. He wants to, with a memo, say we're no longer going to enforce mandatory minimums in this country. So if you can do it with drug laws, can you do it with equal protection laws? Can you do it with discrimination laws? I got one for you. Can you do it with election laws? I'll tell you, the first Tuesday in November is not a good time for us to have a general election in the South. You're right smack in the middle of SEC football. You're worried about maybe your in-laws are going to come for Thanksgiving. Hopefully they're not. But you've got a lot of things on your mind. So I tell you what, let's just not have the election. I mean, I've got your best interest in mind. I'm thinking about you. When I listen to the President of the United States walk into the people's house, and make no mistake, it is your house. They walked into the people's house and said, I'm going to do it with or without you. I was ashamed for the people who have sacrificed for this country. And then quickly that shame turned to anger when I saw half of our colleagues stand up and clap. Half of our colleagues, when the executive branch promised to make them a constitutional anomaly, stood up and clapped. So if our message of peace through strength and personal responsibility, if our message of being respected around the world, if our message of fiscal conservatism, if our message of the sanctity of life, of equal opportunity, if that message won't work, then friends, I'm in the wrong line of work. I don't think it's the message. I think the message still wins. So if it's not the message, you're saying, okay, Gowdy, what is it? Because we won 1 out of the last 6 popular votes for president. If it weren't for something called the Electoral College, we wouldn't have won one of the other times. So 1 out of 6 popular votes, we've won. So it's fair to say, well, is it the message? No, it's not the message. Well, that leaves a messenger, and it leaves the manner in which we communicate. And we're going to talk about the messenger in a second, but I do want to tell you this. While Andy was making A's in school, I was making C's. So he went to medical school, and I went to law school. And I spent 16 years standing in front of 12 people who were not smart enough to get out of jury service. That's how I made a living. They didn't know the judge, they didn't know the sheriff, they didn't know the clerk of court. They couldn't get out of jury service. And I had to convince them beyond a reasonable doubt. And I had to convince all 12. 10 to 2 is great in politics. It's lousy if you're a prosecutor. 52% gets you reelected in politics. It gets you a hung jury in my line of work. So how do you persuade? You have to have a relationship with the person you're trying to persuade. You have to have facts. You have to have evidence. But you have to have credibility. And you have to have a relationship with the person you are trying to persuade. How many of you have been married for more than 30 minutes? How many of you have ever insulted your spouse into changing his or her mind? It does not work in my household, and I am terrified to try. I don't think it works. What happens when somebody insults you? You sit there and make a mental note that I don't care how long it takes, I will never agree that you're right because you insulted me. I mean, your coworkers, you're trying to persuade your coworkers to do something. You don't insult them. You're trying to persuade the people you go to church with to do something. How do you persuade? If it works in every other facet of life, why don't we try it in politics? I'm not saying surrender any deeply held conviction. I'm saying be smart about the way that we try to get people who were not with us last election to get with us this election. Young people. Look, I've told my kids, if it means me supporting the legalization of marijuana to get your vote, I'm just not going to get your vote. I'm just not going to get it. Now, young people do care about privacy. They care about how we as a culture strike that balance between public safety and privacy. Are we persuasive when we talk to young people? Are we do not do well among female voters? Are we persuasive when we talk to them? Is our method and manner of communication calculated to reach? I'm not talking about changing the message. I'm talking about changing the way in which we message. Be persuasive. Communicate. I didn't take statistics, but 1 out of 6 I think is a trend. You want to fix the Attorney General's office? Change who the Attorney General is. You've got some Supreme Court justices who are kind of long in the tooth. Every time I see some of them dip their head, I don't know if it's a nap or something worse. Who's going to pick the next Supreme Court justices? They are, if we don't figure out how to win. So the message is good. We've agreed that we need to be better messengers or better at messaging, and that leaves the third one, which is the messenger. And I know you're sitting there thinking to yourself, where's Reagan? Where's Lincoln? Not in this day and age. We'd kill them in the cradle. They wouldn't get out of the starting blocks. With email and internet and negative campaigning, if we're waiting on another Reagan, it's going to be a long wait. And I think about those guys a lot. Andy and I fly into a city named for Washington, into an airport named for Reagan. We pass statues to Jefferson. And every building we walk in, their portraits, their statues. You're surrounded by great leaders. If we sit there and think that another Reagan is coming, I think we are going to have a long wait. So what do? I'll tell you what you do. You look. I can't afford I cannot afford the alimony and child support of that decision. So it is wonderful for us to study the great leaders of the past, but I'll tell you the truth. When I fly in, Andy drives, but when I fly in to Reagan, I don't think about any of those heroes. Because depending on how the pilot brings us in, we're most likely to see a place called Arlington, which is beautiful from the sky, those elegant white crosses punctuating and dotting a green hillside. It's beautiful. It's tragically beautiful. It's elegant. It's symmetrical. Every now and again, you got to get out of the plane. Every one of those crosses has a name on it. It's an individual sacrifice. Was it done for the collective? Yes, but it was an individual person who had the same hopes and dreams that we did, and they put them on hold in sacrifice and service to this country. You may know the names of some of them, but you don't know the names of all of them. Those, to me, are the leaders. Are you willing to sacrifice for what you believe? And if you can get past Arlington and you see the 14th Street Bridge. Most of you are younger than I am, but when I was 1982, I'm watching television with my father. Plane crashes into the 14th Street Bridge. Any of you know the name of the guy in the Potomac?
January 13th.
Air Florida Flight 90 crashes into the icy waters of the Potomac. Everybody dies on impact except 5 passengers. And they're in the waters of the Potomac, and praise the Lord, a rescue helicopter comes. Lowers a rope ladder, and it falls into the hands of a man named Arlen Williams. Can you imagine the luck? Got life in my hands, my hopes, my dreams. How fortunate I am that the rope fell into my hands. Then he passes it to a stranger. Not his wife, not his child, not his mama, a stranger. And that same scene repeats itself until every single passenger is plucked out of the Potomac, and that rescue helicopter comes back one more time for Arlen Williams. But he'd succumbed to fatigue, and he drowned. So I'm not asking you to be Ronald Reagan. I'm not asking you to be Abraham Lincoln. I'm just asking you, can you lead a quiet life of conviction and honor and character? Can you live out what you believe in such a way that it persuades someone else to come around to your way of thinking? If you can do that, then we'll win again. And for the sake of our country, we better win again. But the leaders don't come from here. They come from there. So let's do it. God bless you.